Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hey, what's up, Nimrush Nation? Welcome back to the IDP Show with me, Nath Davis, and him, Mr. Brendan Veal. So here we are, week one. Week one, it's been... Well, it seems to have taken forever, and then the last couple of weeks it's flown by, and now bang, it's here, and we're good to go. So, Brent, you more excited than me, or I am absolutely bounced off the wall? So
yeah, it's just
it's
just nice to get pre-season out of the way. I mean, I know we've got to go through it, but we were talking about it yesterday. And go, it's you can't read anything into it, really. I mean, we were talking about the Dolphins dicking Philly, what was it, 36 to so. You go, that's not going to happen in the real world, is it? I know they've got to do it. They've got to look at the fringe players and sort the rosters out and all the rest of it. Yeah, glad to see that. It's a necessary evil, but I'm glad it's gone. So, yeah, week one, got some cracking games lined up. And then Thursday night for a kickoff. So,
yeah.
But yeah, we will get into that in a minute. So, but you got a bit to update people on.
We do. We have a lot to update people on, really. Just mainly on the main setup, the look of this the 5 Yard IDP show. We've got announced that we've got two new guys that are joining the team. We've got Lewis Beans, who's already part of the 5 Yard family, and he's doing Fast Action Friday and various, but he's going to be helping us out a bit on the IDP side of things as well. So he's joining the crew. And Mike Rundell, Mike's doing, he's going to start off on the article side of things. The first one's dropped into my inbox already. So hopefully that one will be out by the weekend if we can get it all sorted and edited and get it a process. So that one will be off, and we're kicking things along. But what we've been looking at and discussing kind of all off season really is how we want to go about this IDP show, really. And it's kind of two-prong attack we want to do. We want to do the new IDP, the people that are going to be new to it, that have never played it before, or have just dipped their toe in and want to find out more. So like an education piece. We're going to do that weekly starting from next week. Mainly stuff on things like, I like to talk about positions more than players, because that's where you sort of like get your value. And we want to talk about the depth in each position, streaming strategies, how you attack drafts. I know they've kind of come and gone, but for next year anyway, and how you get value out of each sort of position. Like I said, each individual team's position as well. So what is the value to that team, and what do we know about it, going off previous years, and looking at various different schemes and things like that. But it's just mainly to target the new people getting into it. And then the second stream is the guys that are already playing it, which is what we were doing quite a lot of last year. And that will be, the starts and sits, the player reviews, the matchups, the stuff that we really love doing that, because, we're deep into IDP already, but we understand we've got to grow it. And we've got to do that educational piece as well. So we're gonna make sure we do that every show to try and get more people into it and grow that IDP world, especially in the UK, which is still lagging quite a way behind. So yeah, we also want to do our bit on the weekly matchups, because we love doing the weekly matchups and we love making our predictions and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's good. It's good fun. Maybe it's like me just airing out my bets live on air, and that's cool. I'm happy to be wrong, but there we go. So that tells you all about the plans, mentioned about the team. Tonight we're mainly going to be, it's week one. We can talk all we want about what we think will happen, but we can't wait for it to kick off, and it is going to answer so many questions so quickly, just as we see people line up positionally, and what teams, what looks that they're going for, some of these new coaches, new schemes. And like I said, so we're going to fly over these games this week, mainly just do our prediction side of things, pick out a few of the players, some of the obvious names that some people will obviously should know very well. And then that'll be it for tonight. I've only just come back off holiday, so I haven't done a massive amount of stuff. So I'm happy to. I'm going to be winging loads of games anyway. So yeah, Brendan's done more notes than me again. But there you go. There you go. But
there's a bit of fluff in there, to be honest.
Mate, I've spent so much all off season. I've been so engrossed in what's been going on NFL wise. So, yeah, and I'm probably exhausted with making predictions and then them being quashed and changed, and it's been a roller coaster. Like I said, I can't wait for it to get started, and so I feel like things might settle down once things start. The off season is a pain in my ass. I think it's full of rubbish. It's full of rubbish about who's going to play where, and like some young lads starting, and he's the next big thing, and you're like, nah, he's not. But you have to anyway. Right, forget me ranting, Bren.
Yes.
Over to you, mate. Over to you. What's the plan? What's the running order? And then we'll start going through these.
So we're going to do, those that listened to the pod last season will have seen us sort of do this week by week. As Nath stressed, don't need to sort of hammer the nail home, but we are sort of going off. This is sort of uncharted territory until we get to sort of get Sunday out of the way, or sort of Monday night. So we're going to, those that are new to the pod, we'll rattle through the games. Like we said, we'll keep it pretty brief because we don't necessarily have a lot to work with in terms of having seen them sort of line up. So we're going to start with the Thursday night game. We'll rattle through the Sunday games, starting with the early kickoffs into the late ones, and then do sort of the Monday night. And yeah, just have a little bit of back and forth, a few players that, some obvious ones. I've picked out a couple of sort of, ones that aren't obvious. Might touch on bit that's happened in free agency. But again, we're not going to get plums deep in it because it's just it's early days. So really it's just a case of we probably might sort of throw a few week one predictions in there, and that'll get blown out of the water by about
week one, and Brendan's already said plums deep. Brilliant. This is starting really well.
So yeah, back into the old routine. Let's get the off season bollocks out of the way. Right. Professional as always.
Yeah. Man.
So, like I said, we've got a cracking sort of Thursday night game. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to it. But I'm going to let Nath kick this one off. So, yeah, Thursday night football's back, and we've got the Bills at the Rams.
Wow, what an absolute banger to get us started! That is. Yeah, it's it's going to be a tough one. I'll get to the actual call on it in a minute, but so Bills are defensively, they were classed as the number one defense in 2021. Now, for me, they weren't really the complete package for me to be called the number one defense. I like to see teams that are in every phase very good, and they absolutely hammered some teams, the Bills, and they looked particularly good on particular games, and they just wipe the floor with them. But I just feel that there was massive gaping problem there, and it was at edge. Everyone knew it, and when it comes to the Bills, it was always about, especially in those big games, like the Kansas City game, it was about getting pressure. Can you get pressure on a Patrick Mahomes? Can you get a pressure on a Brady or whoever they're up against in those big games, just to make that vital play? And that's where they always sort of fell short when it comes to being able to outscore a team. Yes, we know how great the offense is, but secondary, decent, linebackers, decent, but it's just, for me, the edge. Now, they've gone and signed Von Miller. So, outside linebacker, but mainly, as you would call him, he's an out-and-out edge rusher. Von is a he is exactly what the doctor ordered. They knew what they wanted. They knew what they needed to do, and they went out and did it. So for me, that is huge. Now, is it huge for Von Miller? Potentially. I think it could be huge for Greg Rousseau, who's on the other side of him. That he was a rookie last year. Greg is excellent pass rusher. I absolutely loved him coming out of college, and I feel that he could be a real one-to target, and he has been for me in the off season. And I'm really looking forward to see how that Bills defense now works with a bit more pressure from the edges. So, other than that, you're expecting your normal sort of solid season, solid performance from Edwards, Matt Milano, Jordan Poyer, these kind of consistently well-scoring IDPs. And I expect them to do particularly same kind of thing. I think the Bills look at pretty much the same team and the same scheme. I think they're just going to go for it. They've just sharpened up a few things, and I think they're going to be there or thereabouts as well. And I fancy the Bills to win this one as well. Why? I just feel that there's a few more bigger changes on the Rams side of things. I think there's a few more inconsistent pieces maybe that need to be settled before the Rams sort of like find their feet, and they could slip up in that. But it is a tough one. There's not going to be much. But looking at another side, the Rams are another side that addressed their sort of big problem. Theirs was at middle linebacker, and they went out and got Bobby Wagner. I mean, yeah, I mean, those two signings are absolutely fantastic for when you watch a team last season and think, crikey, they're missing something, and they've just gone in absolutely plugged it with these worldy players. Now, apart from that, the Rams signed another big leader. So I mean, I think in the whole course of the season, I think that's going to be very good for the Rams. I'm just not sure in this first game whether it will be quite. I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. I just fancy the Bills in this one. I do expect the Rams to improve on their defensive ranking. They were 15th last season. I don't think that really going into the back end, they look better. I think they struggled a bit against the run, but again, with this sort of middle linebacker and tightening up that front core, they can potentially stop the run a lot better this season and quite easily move their way up the rankings, in my opinion. They've also got a few players back. I mean, they've got Jordan Fuller back, safety, who I really liked a couple of years ago, and then he got injured. Taylor Rapp kind of took it over that sort of safety spot. It's going to be interesting. I got Bills to win this one, but I think it could be an absolute cracking game. I expect it to be tight. I expect it to be a tight game. How you got this one, Bren? Have you got any?
Yeah, but a little bit torn, but I would probably side with the Bills. And you touched on sort of the two key additions really in sort of Von Miller and Wagner for the Rams. And I just think the Von Miller addition, and we touched what I highlighted Greg Rousseau a few weeks ago when me and Lewis were picking out, and I commented on the fact that the Von Miller, just his experience and having that presence, in and around someone, rookie going into his second season like a Rousseau, he was going to learn from one of the best, and they've brought in a player and taken the number one defense and improved it, whereas Wagner comes in, like you say, he's a leader, but effectively, the stats don't lie. They were a mid-table defense last season, and I think the offense helped to compensate for that in a lot of ways. Will the Rams have a little bit? We've seen it season in, season out, bit of a Super Bowl hangover. First game, I wouldn't disagree with the Bills.
I mean, the thing is I suppose it's slightly identity as well. I mean, offensively, it's for me, it's obviously a running back is a big issue. Well, for both sides, it's been. However, with I rate Stafford, I do, but he's no Josh Allen when it comes to being able to make plays on the fly, for me anyway. So there is that element of the run game being so vitally important for Rams to get right, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Cam Akers is out of the gun, and then how they use the backups and what they're going to do. I just worry that that's not quite settled. Obviously, got Allen Robinson as well for the Rams. So I mean, they've got the firepower. Cups back in, still obviously fully fit and all that side of things. So I don't know, tight one, but it's Bills for me. It's Bills for me.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll shift on quickly to, because I thought we'd talk a bit longer than we planned about the Bills Rams, but it's a cracking contest. So we'll move on to the Sunday sort of games. I'll start off. So we got Saints at Falcons. So we talked about the top defense in the league in the Bills last season. So yeah, looking at the Falcons, we had a bit of a chat about them yesterday with a friend of ours. So the 29th ranked sort of defense last season. This is very much a rebuild process at the moment for Atlanta. Looking at sort of what they've still got to offer on the defensive side. Deion Jones at linebacker. Unfortunately, he's had a setback with his shoulder surgery, so he's going to be out until, at the moment, they're saying week 4, possibly week 5. If from a fantasy perspective, you've got him on the roster, are you looking at sort of an injury where he's starting to play a factor? He's still only 27. He's still potentially the best point scorer on that team. And to be fair, I wouldn't be panicking about it. He's going to be the lead linebacker there, with the exception of 2018, where he had an injury that sort of restricted him 6 games. He's been pretty consistent. I worry about some of the players they brought in Rashaan Evans and 1 or 2 others. LB 66, nothing. I mean, I think talking about sort of changes to teams and looking at, as we will do, some of the players that have been drafted in, one to watch coming in could be their 2nd round pick, Troy Anderson at linebacker, especially with the Jones injury. A lot of the pundits rate this kid. He's played QB and running back at college, so he understands the game on both sides of the ball. He's intelligent. If he is being tipped to start, but a lot of that will be down to sort of the Jones injury. Falcons desperately need to improve their pass rush. So obviously, no surprise, their other 2nd rounder was an edge rusher, Arnold Ebiketie. Again, he should be sort of earmarked to start. The secondary is still decent for the Falcons. I don't really have too many concerns there. AJ Terrell had a good season last year, and they brought in a bit of experience in Casey Hayward from the Raiders. But Falcons, it's I think, as we've said, very much a transitional sort of rebuild process. Going over to the Saints, other end of the spectrum, 4th ranked defense last season. The Saints will be the Saints again. As far as defense goes, like Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, they'll go again. Yeah, they're both 32, but we know the Saints like older players. It's the way they do it. Always have done, probably always will. But I think they will be looking for some of the younger players to step up. Linebacker, I mean, after Quan Alexander sort of left for the Jets, I think they'll be looking at likes of sort of Pete Werner. He should be that guy looking to sort of push on and sort of step into that a little bit more. They've not done nothing really sort of in the draft. They brought in a cornerback who might be used a bit sporadically. But free agency in the secondary is what I think they've done well in the offseason. They brought in Marcus May, they brought in the old Honey Badger, Daniel Sorensen to some extent might be a factor, but Marcus May is the one for me that I think improves that secondary. I think it's quite a, again, we were talking with a friend of ours who's a Falcons fan. He's sort of leaning towards maybe the Falcons causing a bit of an upset in this one. And I don't know how you feel about. I think we're both agreed on the state that the Falcons are in, and I don't think we'll see anything radically different from the Saints this season.
Yeah, I mean, I love Atlanta. I love these teams. I mean, I think anybody that is into IDP in such a big way, when you've got these teams that are under massive transition, they're so cool for us because there's gonna be in especially in the Falcons, knowing what the Falcons are like for that they've in the past few years have produced a decent scoring linebacker every year. Two last year. And you think to yourself, okay, it's a new team and a new setup, so it will be slightly different. However, the likelihood is that there's going to be somebody that we're possibly not talking about that is going to really break through, and it could be a McCall Walker or a Troy Anderson, or and that excites me anyway, and others in that IDP world, because there is that open, you've really got an open window where there possibly might be more as well. Secondary wise, I liked Richie Grant last year. He could really break out. We saw AJ Terrell last season, and I expect him to kick on even further. The Saints, yeah, the Saints. I mean, like you said, Brent, they do seem to love their season players. I quite like their signings. I think, like you said, the secondary, they've nailed it. But how long does that sort of stand up? Because they seem to quite easily let young, good talent go, and then pick up older, more seasoned players that are, very good. But I don't know. I don't like the long-term approach sometimes with the Saints. I'm always a bit like that with them. However, I do feel that I think they're going to win this game. I do think that for the Falcons, I think they might cause a few surprises this year, the Falcons, but that'll be because they've got nothing to lose. I feel that they've got, they can be expansive and do some weird and wonderful stuff. If it gets to that, I don't think there's going to be a problem, because nobody's really going to be expecting much from them anyway. And they have got players like Mariota who can run the ball. They've got some real big players as well. I mean, Pitts is big, Drake London's big, Patterson's big. I mean, that end zone is just it's like they're going to be putting up skyscrapers at the back of the end zone and lobbing it up there. But maybe that's their plan. I don't know. But it's going to be quite interesting. I think the Falcons are a fun one to watch. I don't think they're going to be very good, but I think they're going to be quite fun to, like the Lions last year and teams that have gone before on them that are going to be, I don't know.
I mean, there is actually one on the Saints that I highlighted. I did just sketch it down in my notes, sort of bucking the trend a little bit and going away from these sort of 30-something-year-olds. But on the opposite side of Marshawn Lattimore, who a lot of people will pick up, the other guy playing corner, Paulson Adebo,
Yes.
23. Now, if you look at the stats from last season, all the focus, Lattimore's a seasoned player, and a lot of players, you're going to take him in the draft once you get to sort of that stage on the board. But Adebo actually put up 3 picks and 66 tackles. Now, his stats are almost identical to Lattimore, and yet no one's picking him up. And I think in a solid defense like the Saints, he could be a nice little sleeper. If you're looking for someone at DB, I would have a look at Paulson Adebo. If he's out there, he's playing in a solid defense team that's going to, win a lot. They're going to play in corner. They're going to be in games where teams are like the Falcons, possibly chasing the game late on, lobbing the ball around. I think he's a nice little sleeper, Adebo.
Yeah, I think they've got. I think they've still the Saints are going to still be. I think they're going to be a good defense. I mean, when you look down there, I think Onyemata's a good player. I think obviously Cam Jordan, seasoned professional, and like you said, Adebo looked good last season. They've signed Tyrann Mathieu. There's just a lot of good players there, and guys that know what they're doing. That don't necessarily need time to fit in. We know they've still got a problem. I still think they've got a problem at linebacker. I think obviously they are relying on. I don't know whether they feel that Demario Davis. I had the feeling that going back a year or more longer than that Demario Davis was ready to go, ready to retire, and it looked like last season. I thought, they kept keeping him going, really keeping him going. And I don't mean contractually. I just mean as an actual value to them, because he's still a very good linebacker. But it's just a case of, will it come where he does start to struggle a bit more? I think they wanted Zach Bourne to step up, and he didn't really. I think Pete Werner looked good at times last season, but again, it wasn't that kind of solid linebacker. Obviously, Quan Alexander didn't really do it. And yeah, it just feels for me that I still think there's some questions around a linebacker for them. And it's all on Demario Davis for me. I think he is really important to them still.
Okay, next Sunday game, you've got Browns at the Panthers.
Oh, that's me. One for me. So let's start with Carolina. Okay, so Carolina last season. I was so hot on them at the start of the season. A lot of people were on their defense. I think team defense is why they started off so well. And so did Sam Darnold. So we all know what happened there. But it all went bad very quickly at Carolina. The whole team organization is where everything just sort of like soured quite quickly. A lot of reasons why defensively. Mainly for me, it was a health issue that really, really battered them, especially in the secondary. I'm really looking forward to seeing JC Horn this year. He was a crippling blow for many reasons, I think, as well. I think that they seemed to have last season, they had one team on paper that looked really good, their defense. And I think that's what people got really, really excited about. And then it quickly come to everyone's attention that they didn't have any depth. The minute that they started to lose a couple of players, they looked bad. And that is still a little bit of a worry. They have addressed a few positions, added a few more players, especially at linebacker. Corey Littleton's one that's been added there. But also, like I said, it's like I spoke about Jeremy Chin in the last pod that we did, and I'm really high on Jeremy Chin, and I feel if the defense can stay injury free ish around him, I think you will see a better Jeremy Chin, because he will be able to do some of those things and be used in the way I think everybody wants to see him used, which is more as a box safety and more as a bit of an all-round line safety stroke linebacker as well. He can do all sorts of things. So yeah, but that's all down to everything sort of like fitting in, all being lined up to allow him to really go for it. That's my view anyway of him. So I am high on Carolina, but I still do worry a little bit on that depth side of things. I don't think they can swap too many players around and get away with it, if you know what I mean. The Browns, flipping over to them defensively, the Browns, I think they're a hugely difficult team to evaluate at this moment. I can't wait to see them on the field because there are question marks around quite a few positions that are not quite nailed on, in my opinion, at this stage. I think there's a few question marks. I mean, we're expecting a breakout season from Jock, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He looked really good last season. I thought he's a very rangy linebacker. He covers the field really well. And I think he's shown real signs that he could be not only a really good linebacker, but a bit of a leader in that defense as well. I think that's what they're really looking for there. So I'm hoping that he's gonna settle in and look the part straight away. Obviously, you've got the obvious players like Myles Garrett. I expect him to dominate, but I'm not sure if there's another edge rusher that is really going to be that fantasy relevant. Yeah, there's a lot in both of these teams. There's a lot we want to see on that field before we make too many more predictions with it. Like I said, I quite like Carolina for definitely being a better team across the board this season. As for the matchup, I haven't spoken about him that much. I was a massive Deshaun Watson fan before all of this stuff come out about him. But now, I mean, I'm not sure how it's all going to play out for Cleveland this season, and especially at the early games. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to sort of like properly get into the mix of everything. It looks a bit of a mess to me, and I actually fancy the Panthers to win this one. They got Baker under center, and I'm quite, I just see it. It's just written in the stars. I mean, Baker's surely he's gonna do it, and he's just gonna be sticking two fingers up to his former team. I mean, that's what it looks like, that this is already written. That's going to happen. Obviously, McCaffrey's back fit. So, yeah, for me, all things are pointing to the Panthers. Players to watch in this one. I'm interested to see people like Derek Brown at DT and Shaq Thompson at middle linebacker, making sure that he's fully fit. So those two players from the Carolina Panthers. Like I said, I'm not really picking anybody from the Browns at this moment in time, apart from Jock. Want to see him do particularly well. I think the Panthers are going to win. I just can't wait to see this drama unfold in this one. It's like some kind of soap opera kind of weird film that we're going to be watching on Sunday. What do you reckon, Bram?
And I think Roger Goodell sort of scripted this. Can't really argue with anything there. I think the Panthers have done little bits, like you said, to address that depth issue. Like bringing Corey Littleton in. They brought in Damian Wilson from the Jags at linebacker as a bit of cover as well. I think the Browns have been, with the exception of the two players you mentioned, I've got a couple of concerns for this, for this defense. Not just Baker coming back and looking to just ball out and show them up, but I think sort of long term, obviously they're going to have to start with Jake, Brissett under the center, and I've been seeing him sort of play as the backup at Miami last year. You go, yeah, he's okay, but they're going to lean very heavily on, the run and Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and if that doesn't, if teams stuff that early doors, then I think they could be in real trouble and be chasing the game quite early on. So, and I think there's been, whereas Carolina have taken steps to sort of plug little holes and do bits to improve the defense, I think the Browns have just been so consumed with the whole Deshaun saga and getting that over the line, and then what was going to happen. And it's almost like, well, nothing else really mattered to the front office. It was sort of all or nothing on that sort of QB pantomime, and I think that could really be to the detriment of the team, because they still don't know when he's going to come back. And frankly, I think, like a lot of people doing, you listen to a lot of podcasts, and they've just gone, we don't want to talk about that really. It's all a bit unnecessary and unsavory, so I'm going to draw a line under that. I agree. I think the Panthers for this one. I think the Browns might have some problems this season. Moving swiftly on. I've got the Niners at the Bears. So the Bears, not a million miles away from sort of what we were talking about with the Falcons before. I'm a little bit worried about this Bears team actually this season. They were the 22nd ranked D last season, and you look outside of the 163 tackles from Roquan Smith and the 18 sacks from Robert Quinn, and then you're stretching a bit. This is a tough division, especially this year with the Lions looking to kick on, and the Bears need to improve in other areas. Khalil Mack's gone to the Chargers, Akeem Hicks to the Bucks, Bilal Nichols to the Raiders. They've had some rather sizable holes sort of punched in that defensive roster in the off season. Second round draft pick, sort of Kyler Gordon could be an interesting addition if he's sort of paired up with sort of Jalen Johnson. Opposing offenses sort of didn't really target sort of Johnson in the last season because, there were softer options. They sort of messed around with that secondary quite a bit on the opposite side to Johnson, and I think teams identified that. And the clever offenses just sort of stayed away from him. I think put in someone, all right, he's very much unknown, and this is the problem we're talking about week one. But if Gordon, if they're confident in him and it works out, then, you might see from a fantasy perspective something like, Johnson's tackle numbers could see a notable noticeable uptick. So, safety Brisker looks a solid addition in the secondary as well. They picked up the edge rusher Al-Qadim Mohammed from the Colts in free agency. I think that's a reasonable addition, but I just think they've lost a couple of key pieces in that defense. Looking at the Niners, well, I mean, we were talking yesterday, getting a bit ahead of ourselves and talking about sort of Super Bowl predictions, and I'd already said I don't think picking the Niners as an early bet at this stage would be that radical. They were 9th ranked D last season. They're a pretty solid outfit. I mean, there's nothing too much I'm going to sort of bang on about. You've got your Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. If you've got them on the roster, more of the same this season, please, gents. Main free agency acquisitions in the corner, Javarius Ward, they picked up from Kansas. That beefs up the secondary. Had a reasonable season last year with 133 points. He's going to play on the opposite side to Emmanuel Mosley. So they look fairly solid there. Draft-wise, they brought in pass rusher Drake Jackson, but he looks to be a longer-term threat. I think from what I've read, they'll be looking at him. He might feature a bit this season, but I think they'll be looking for him as more of a long-term partner, running mate, if you like, with Nick Bosa long-term. So I think, there's nothing too much I'm really sort of focusing on with the Niners. I think the Bears have got, I think the Niners will win the game. I think the Bears have got some problems. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Fields to keep that defense off the field if they can do that. I suppose the big surprise was the Niners getting rid of Jaquiski Tartt, who they offloaded to the Eagles, and the Eagles have now released him. I mean, seems a bit harsh. You drop one interception in a championship game, and so he's had
incredible, really.
Had to put Mayer an off season. Just be nice to see him end up somewhere. But I think the Bears have got some issues. I think again, very much a bit of a rebuilding process there. Niners to win the game. I think the Niners will be solid on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, great. I totally agree with you. I think the Niners were. They're a solid unit, and I think that defense is potentially. I would say it has improved. I think it's mainly going to be down to keeping a lot of the big names and keeping. I think like linebacker especially. I think they're extremely strong. I think obviously alongside Fred Warner, it's that other linebacker. That question, is it Greenlaw? Is it going to be Al-Shahir? Which one? I mean, I like both of them in a way. They're both big hitters. It's a strong. I think it's a strong defense, and they do have depth. San Francisco, and I think they're and as you said, offensively, actually the whole squad. I think on paper their squad is right up there with the best in the NFL. So. It's just whether they can put it together. And obviously the question is at quarterback. It is at quarterback. I think if they get, if Trey Lance becomes the elite quarterback that people are saying, and it is saying because he hasn't done anything yet, absolutely anything. And in preseason, a couple of games, I watched one of the preseason games. He was absolutely awful. So it is a worry. But if it was to happen, I think the 49ers are going to be really, really strong. But it is filling that it is ticking that box, and whether it happens or not is another thing. For the Bears, I agree with you. I think the Bears are a bit of a nailed on team that are not good, that are going to struggle as such. However, there is some. I mean, Justin Fields looks particularly quite good so far. What I've seen of him. In preseason, and seems to be moving well, throwing a bit better. And I feel that defensively wise, I think Brisker at safety has a lot to offer. I love this kid. He was actually, I had him ranked as one of my top safeties, and I just feel that I think he could be a real good fantasy player as well. And I think the signing of Nick Morrow to put alongside Roquan Smith is a good one as well. And I expect Nick Morrow to do particularly quite well this year. So he's another one. That's just another one that I've targeted quite a few drafts and things like that. So yeah, Brisker, Morrow, they're two guys that I really like this year. But as for the game, 49ers for me, absolutely nailed on.
Key. We're off to Cincinnati. You're doing Steelers at the Bengals.
Oh yeah, right. God, I've done hardly any notes on these. So what did I put? Well, I put obviously the fact that this is a divisional absolute banger of a game to start us off with. I do feel for Pittsburgh a bit this year. I think they've announced that Trubisky is going to be starter. What does that mean for this particular game? Well, I don't really know is the answer to that, because Trubisky, if you're going to go back to how he was when he was at the Bears, which was up and down and quite unpredictable, therefore he was difficult to predict. He was difficult to assess then. We're not sure really what Trubisky we're going to see. But the Bengals aren't really going to care. I think they don't need to. All Bengals need to do is play at 70%, and I think they've got this one in the bag for me. That's how I feel about it. I think the Steelers have got which is a whole new offense. Really, that's a whole new offense that I've got. Even like you say at tight end with Freymouth, he only put 1 year in behind him last year. Deontay Johnson, he's probably the one sort of like consistent. We're not sure about Claypool, how much of a role he's going to be actually given. Then you've got the rookies Pickens, and the other guy I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's a whole new offense, and going to the Bengals first game is not really where you want to go, not particularly. I would be starting everybody that I could in that Bengals defense, because I think the matchup is particularly favorable, and it could go really badly wrong for the Steelers. That would be my take on it. I'm not big at all on the Steelers, as you might have gathered this year. I was really disappointed with the linebacker room. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I don't rate Miles Jack, and Devin Bush has struggled since his sort of breakout year, and injuries and all sorts of stuff. So I don't think personally, I know some people do like it. I don't like what I see from the best thing about the Steelers is probably their secondary at the moment. Okay, and TJ Watt, they must nurse him through to try and give them those kind of games where he has those dominant games and really, gets to a QB and really knocks him off his game. Because otherwise, I just feel that in their division as well, I just feel the Ravens, if they get their running backs fit, especially Dobbins, I think the Ravens and the Bengals are going to fight it out for those top spots. And Steelers, it's tough for them. I think it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you say. I mean, Miles Jack coming in. Well, if the Jags didn't deem him good enough, then I think that kind of says it all, really. But and I think since I think it'll just be more of the same. They've not really done much in the way of defensive changes, in free agency in the off season. And I think it'll. Yeah, I agree. You'd be looking at starting your Hubbards, your Trey Hendricksons. Against this, like you say, very much a sort of not makeshift, but somewhat experimental.
I didn't say too much about the Bengals. I think they've strengthened. I think they've done everything particularly right. I think this is a great, it's a great chance for them to even improve on their last season. I do think they look particularly good. And if they can keep Burrow fit and keep things all ticking in the right, but the O-line seems to have got even. They seem to have one of the strongest O-lines now, from having by far the weakest at one stage. in the past couple of years. They seem to be really, if they get it all right, I mean, the Bengals are going to be a good side.
Yeah. Okay. Eagles at Lions. So I think everyone is keen to see what the Lions, we've all seen them on Hard Knocks. But I think it's, now we're at the business end of things. And so as I say, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of hype around the Lions because they've been sort of the Hard Knocks focus in the off season. Obviously there's going to be a lot of focus on the overall number 2 pick, Aiden Hutchinson. And again, week 1, we're into the unknowns, but if he hits the ground running, I don't think there's much question that he is a game-changing sort of player in that Lions defense. Obviously, we'll know a bit more after this weekend. It's going to be interesting, actually, for assuming he will start on Sunday. First game up, against a very mobile quarterback in Jalen Hurts, how he handles that. The Detroit defense is going to be better than its 31st ranking last season. I've got no doubt about that. They've re-signed sack leader Charlie Harris, who I quite like on the quiet. I think it's just nothing exciting, but I think he's a solid player. Safety Tracy Walker's also re-signed on a sizable contract, and makes sense. He had 108 tackles last season, so. And they've drafted. They brought in another safety in the draft, Kirby Joseph, who could be a strong addition to that secondary. So there's lots of things, just on the defensive side of it, that I think there's definitely things to like about sort of the Lions coming into this season. I got stuck with the Eagles. I'm not going to go on a big Eagles rant. Can't. But regular listeners will know, you kind of know the crap by now. We like the Eagles. We're not making any secrets of it. But linebacker and top sort of fantasy scorer last season has gone to Denver, but that's fine because they've got one of Nath's favourites in TJ Edwards to hold the fort. They brought in Kazir White from the Chargers. Hassan Reddick arrives. He's coming on big money, but he also comes in off the back of 200 fantasy points and 11 sacks last season. James Bradbury's come from the Giants to beef up the secondary. I can see him smiling away over there. You start going through it, you go, this is just, it's proper sort of fantasy defense stuff. Fletcher Cox re-signed on a 1-year contract extension, which I know he was sort of being sort of touted as a lot of people were sort of, because I think he went onto free agency for about a day, and then they sort of got the contract sorted out. I think it was fairly recent. But that kind of makes sense to me because they're looking to bed in someone I'm really excited to see, their top draft pick, Jordan Davis. So keeping the experience of Fletcher Cox in that sort of D-line does make sense as they sort of bed this kid in. And he's one we talked about it after the draft. He's definitely one I'm keen to see. And, you look at all that talent behind him, and they can kind of just give him a bit of license to relax and just go and run over people, because there's no doubt about it. At 6'6" and 340 pounds. I mean, he's got the potential to scare some shit, scare the shit out of some O-lines. And you just look, I mean, they were 18th ranked defense last year, the Eagles. We shouldn't get too excited about it. It's all fine on paper. We've seen this before. We talked about the Panthers and how good they were going to be if they keep everyone fit. And we talked about the Cards last summer and all this young talent, if it all comes together. But you're not talking about throwing sort of kids into them. You're talking about seasoned professional players coming into, what was already a decent mid-table sort of defense by the end of last season. I know everyone's excited to see the Lions this season. I'm really keen to see Aiden Hutchinson, see if he is the real deal, which, based on what we saw in Hard Knocks, I think the kid can do it. But I think the Eagles win the game. But I think this is one of my favourite matchups of the weekend. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'd like to see the Lions doing better again. I'm keen to see. I'm just hoping that all this sort of preseason excitement by me and Nathan Philly it's going to blow up in my face. So a great matchup. Eagles for me, improvements on both sides, but I think the Eagles have just added a lot of key pieces to make this this defense really, really solid this season.
Yeah, well, I'm completely with you. Yeah, for me, it's not just obviously it's defensively, offensively. I think the Eagles have been the standout for me. Team they've added absolute it all over the field. I think they've added pieces, depth, and also just general good players. Fantasy wise, some absolute excellent players. Now they are absolutely littered with players that can put up good points. The Lions, I mean, yeah, they're sort of trending in for me in upwards. But it's still a big work in progress. I think we're looking at those players that re-signed again. Tracy Walker's obviously the big one that for me he's really important. But I do, like you said, Kirby Joseph is a very good safety, and I feel that there's a position there for him. They still didn't really address linebacker, which was a little bit of a disappointment for me for the Lions this year. I just felt that they were they seem to like Anzalone still. I mean, I don't get it, but there you go. A lot of people think that Derek Barnes was going to be something. I'm not sure whether he ever is. I like old Rodriguez. I mean, talking about Hard Knocks, he's going to be a bit of a character if he ever gets the role at linebacker. Maybe he is something. He seems to, certainly they like him. But he seems to work hard, but we'll see if he can actually amount to anything in the NFL. As for the matchup, yeah, for me, Eagles all the way. And I'm going to struggle to go against them in a lot of games this year. I just, until we see something, see them actually out there, because on paper it all looks bloody good. Whether it works, we'll wait and see.
Yeah. Where are we going next? So you're off to Colts at the Texans.
Colts at the Texans. Well, for me, there's only one winner in this game that you would expect. So we're getting down to the games that I have not produced any notes from, so I'm completely winging it. I don't know what the latest is on Shaq Leonard, aka Darius Leonard, as we knew him all these years previously. As their main linebacker one, he is a vital piece of that defense. Bobby Okereke alongside him, another excellent linebacker. I can't wait to see them back on the field together. The whole Colts team, I'm quite excited to see with Matt Ryan behind center. I think that they could become a better team than they were. Defensively, Nick Cross, young safety, I think he's potentially somebody that if you see him hanging around on any waivers, you must snap him up, because he has looking like this starting job, and he could be in for some points this year. The Colts are, I think they're a good side. I think they're a good defense as well, and I expect them to be roughly around the top. I still think they need some work around the edges. I think they need to be able to apply a bit more pressure in normal sort of normal formations, not just getting safeties and corners and people from the linebacker to try and rush the QBs. I think they need some strong edge rusher. We'll see if anybody breaks out this year from in that space from them. What else have I got on the Texans? Texans are an interesting one. Again, like I said to you earlier, I do like these. I like these teams that are not that sexy and not looking like they're going to do too much, because defensively there is those kind of guys that break out who we necessarily don't know. I mean, at linebacker as well, we're thinking that Kirksey is the number one. Gruger Hill probably two. You've got there's a rookie they signed, Harris. Is it Harris? Was it Harris that they signed as linebacker? Young linebacker, I think it was. And yeah, there's certainly room in that team for somebody to really break out. I like Jonathan Greenard. I've mentioned him before. Is one of those players who he kind of broke out last year, and he as a fantasy relevant edge. And I expect him to have a half decent year this year because he's going to be the guy. Yeah. Apart from that, I see the Colts winning it. And yeah, another interesting one to watch and see how it all sort of pans out.
Yeah, Christian Harris was the linebacker they brought in from Alabama.
Fella.
And then obviously, the main one was Stingley at sort of cornerback, who everyone will be sort of waiting to see.
Yeah.
Could be a busy boy this season.
I like Petrie. Petrie is the guy I like as well, safety. Keep an eye on him.
Okay. The Texans, like you say, probably some value to be had. But for me, it's difficult with them. I think they're one of those teams I'm waiting to see sort of week 1 or 2, and then not really sure sort of what to expect. I think they surprised, with sort of Mills and people like that last season. They did surprise a few people. They're in a, they're not in the toughest division. It's a bit open that sort of side for me this season. I think there's a few question marks around the Titans. I think the Colts, like you said, they'll be solid. The addition of Ryan, I think we'll see. I'd like to see him I think he'll get sort of arguably the best out of Pittman at wide receiver and things like that. Obviously, they've got Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, Colts win. No great surprise on the Colts defense. DeForest Buckner, Leonard, people like that. So yeah, I think good matchup, but let's wait and see how it pans out, and then we can start sort of picking the bones out of it.
Yeah. I think so.
Okay. I'm going to the Pats at my Dolphins week 1. The Dolphins is fairly easy, so I'm not going to bang on about them. We were a mid-table defense last year, and still managed to finish with a winning record, which was largely down to that defense. So all the focus in the offseason has been on the offense. So in theory, we don't have to rely as much on the defense. So very quickly, no great surprises. Jerome Baker is going to be the lead linebacker. He's a fairly safe bet if you've got him on the roster, always is. Sack leader Emmanuel Ogbah has been re-signed on for me, quite a big sort of 32 million guaranteed contract. I like Emmanuel Ogbah, and he is good for a sack. But I think they were doing everything they could in this offseason to just, that was good last season. We're going to improve the offense. Same again. Let's just get on with it. You know what you're going to get from the Dolphins defense. Xavier Howard now on another restructured massive contract. Be the top dog in the secondary. They've added a bit of cover in at the edge. Brought in Trey Flowers from the Lions, Melvin Ingram from the Chiefs, which I think he's decent rotation player. I'm a bit surprised the Chiefs let him go as cheaply as as easily as they did. They brought in a linebacker. I think it was in the 3rd round of the draft, Channing Tindall, who the one thing he will give him, he's not going to be a starter. I mean, Jerome Baker is going to be that single sort of lead linebacker, but he does have, from what I've seen and read, he's very mobile.
Bren, keep talking. I've just got to go and get my charger. Keep going, mate.
Okay, no worries. So Channing Tindall, I think he's a clever addition in so much as he's got a lot of speed, a lot of mobility, going up against divisional sort of rivalries like the Bills. Josh Allen, very mobile quarterback. I think he gives them that speed in the middle of the park. I think any improvements you see on this defense, no great surprises again. We'll be looking to see sort of Jevon Holland at safety, Jalen Phillips, on the edge, sort of kicking on, having a better year too. Moving on to the Pats, I'm not entirely sure what to make of this sort of Pats team this season. I think the D's going to have to be at it again this season. There was 2nd ranked defense last year, and I think the fact that Mac Jones had a good rookie season under center papered over some of those cracks on offense. The JC Jackson trade to the Chargers surprised me a bit, but they have drafted a couple of corners in Marcus Jones from Houston, who is, he's regarded by a lot as a real sort of potential baller. Very clever, very versatile sort of player in the secondary. Carl Van Noy, who I've always quite liked, has left for the Chargers. Crucially for this Pats defense, though, sort of the nuts and bolts of a good defense sort of remain intact. Matt Judon was great last season. We like the safety Carl Duggar, someone Nate's been sort of very high on. Linebacker Juwan Bentley's re-signed. They've brought in safety Jabril Peppers from the Giants. So, as I say, they were number 2 defense last season. I expect them to be sort of there or thereabouts. It's the offense where I don't think they're sort of going to be as good as they were this season. I can see a weird situation with the Pats where you can never sort of second guess Belichick, and he's brought some people in around him now, Joe Judge and Matt Patricia and people like that. So they'll find a way to scheme it up and win games. But I think this is a tough division for them this season. The Bills should win the division reasonably comfortably. The Jets I expect to improve. I think the Dolphins will be strong with all the offensive changes. So I could see two scenarios. One, I could see the Pats scheming it up and playing clever football and somehow scraping into the playoffs like last season. I could potentially see a situation where they finish, bottom of the division. But again, I think it's going to take a couple of weeks to see how that pans out. But I am going to back the Dolphins for the win on this, and seeing as Nathan's dropped out, I'm going to speak for him and say he thinks exactly the same. So what we'll do is, because Nathan's otherwise engaged at the moment, we'll skip over the Ravens Jets. I'll jump on to sort of the Jags at Washington. So Washington. Oh, hang on. Is he coming back? Hey, that was good timing.
Jesus. It's everything.
You back with me?
Go on, mate. Carry on.
No, it's fine. Right, I've just wrapped up the Pats Dolphins. Screen's frozen, mate. Can you hear me?
Keep going, mate. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going, and it'll settle down eventually, I think.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, I've just wrapped up the Pats Dolphins. So I think unless you've got anything you want to sort of throw in, or whilst we're waiting for it to settle down, I'm going to jump over your next game. So I'm going to look at the Jags at Washington. So Washington, 25th ranked sort of defense last season. And I'd be looking to add a couple of sort of Washington players to the roster if you can sort of pick them up in the right positions, because I think with Carson Wentz taking command, I'm not going to call them the Commanders. This offense, my feeling is that this Washington defense are going to be busy boys this year. Chase Young hopefully will be back around about week 4, and I think we'd all like to see him replicate the sort of form he showed in that rookie season. So that'll be a massive boost to Washington. They've just picked up the 5th-year option on Montez Sweat, who only managed 10 games last season. So they're 2 keys this season. If they can get Young back fully fit, early doors, getting back by say early October, and if they can keep Montez Sweat fit and on the pitch. I know he's had a few other sort of side issues. Cole Holcomb will be the pick of the bunch. Picked up 242 points last season, 142 tackles. He's a no-brainer. Cameron Curl for me is at safety is potentially one to look at. He does seem to get overlooked quite a bit at DB, but he's sort of quietly racked up 99 tackles last season in his second season. Also, another reason I'll be looking at someone like Cameron Curl, if you're looking for someone in the DB, is obviously they've released Landon Collins. So that's going to sort of open up a bit of a gap. The Jags, 28th ranked defense last season. But having said that, a bit like, we talked about the Lions before. I think this Jags defense could be quite handy this season. I mean, obviously they've got the number 1 pick in Trevor Walker, beefing up that pass rush again, a bit like Aiden Hutchinson and 1 or 2 others. Sauce Gardner and players like that. We're all keen to see, whether he hits the ground running, whether he can live up to the hype. One of the main beneficiaries, excitingly for the Jags fans, of Trevor Walker coming in is going to be that, it should. One of the main beneficiaries is going to be Josh Allen, basically, last season's sack leader, because, Trevor Walker is going to take some of the attention off him. Linebacker, as we mentioned before, Miles Jack has gone, Damian Wilson are out, and it looks like they'll be looking to pair. The new pairings looking like being obviously Foyce Lucan, who's come in on sort of big money from the Saints, and the number 20 pick, sort of Devin Lloyd, who offers good flexibility, which I think they were missing with Miles Jack and Wilson. So they've also brought in sort of Darius Williams at corner from the Rams, just to bolster that secondary. So yeah, I think it could be. Excuse me 1 second. Right. Okay, I've just had a message through from Nath. He's had a full power cut. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to rattle through the last sort of couple of games, and we're going to have to leave it from there, and Nath will sort of wrap it up, or get it sort of out as soon as possible. So yeah, in terms of the matchup, I quite fancy the Jags. I know they're away in Washington, but I think they've with the likes of the addition of Walker, Foyce Lucan, I think Washington, like a couple of teams we've mentioned, going to have some problems. I worry about the offense. Worry about Wentz. I've not got a real downer on Wentz. I just, I think it's a team with some holes in it on both sides of the ball. So we'll go with the Jags on that one. Chiefs and Cardinals. So we'll try and rattle through these fairly quickly. So Cards had the 11th ranked D last season, and I'd really personally, I'd like to see this Cardinals defense really sort of work out this season. It's not like they had a bad season, but we've been waiting really for some of these younger combinations to click. And last season's 2 sort of top fantasy scorers, Jordan Hicks has gone to the Vikings, Chandler Jones to the Raiders. So that suggests that they do have confidence in these young players, the young linebackers. Safety Jalen Thompson racked up over 200 points last season, and to be fair, Isaiah Simmons did as well. So I think they felt confident enough to let the likes of Hicks and Chandler Jones go, because there were players on the roster that were sort of it's a good defense in sort of principle. I think they've just struggled in certain games to sort of put it all together. Buda Baker's still there, solid pick at DB. I'd be looking. I know a lot of you still got him on the roster. I'd be looking to drop JJ Watt if you haven't already. I love the guy. He's been a fantastic player, but he just won't stay fit this season. Marcus Golden, someone Nathan and I have highlighted before as in our eyes, a largely undervalued sort of edge rusher. But and could be picked up. And I think he'll be nicely complemented by their 3rd round draft pickup, Cameron Thomas. So that, the 2 of those on opposite sides. But Marcus Golden, someone again we've highlighted before. If he's out there, he's in later round, well, not drafts, but just looking forward if you can find him at the right sort of value. We've always rated him. The Chiefs, not too much to say about the Chiefs. They were a top 10 D last season, as you'd probably expect. Didn't have a great start to the season, but seemed to get better as the season moved on. Bit of an overhaul in the secondary this off-season, as we've touched on before. Tyrann Matthews and Daniel Sorensen are gone. Justin Reed's come in from the Titans, as well as their round 2 pick, Brian Cook. But I like both their 1st round picks. Corner Trent McDuffie will start the season. They moved up to get him, and they were happy to let Javarius Ward leave. So that kind of says it all. A lot of people, really rate this kid. They've also brought in George Karlaftis to boost the pass rush. Again, someone that I think we're all sort of, from a defensive point of view, keen to see. Bit of cover. They brought in Carlos Dunlap from the Seahawks, but that will be just a bit of cover for, he's 33, so that's going to be a bit of cover for Chris Jones and Frank Clark. Nick Bolton, obviously, it goes without saying, he's still the top dog at linebacker, so nothing much to cover off there. What I like with the Chiefs, I like what they've done in the offseason, because they've not done anything radical like one or two other teams that I expect to be pretty good this season. They've identified a couple of areas. They've made some tweaks, just a bit of reinforcement in the secondary, boosted the sort of the pass rush with Karlaftis. But aside from that, it's a fairly settled unit. I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win this one at Arizona. And I think, as we'd all expect, they're going to be sort of there or thereabouts again. Bucks at the Cowboys, I think would now Chiefs Cardinals is the first of the late games on Sunday. So, Bucks Cowboys is another late kickoff on Sunday. So, start with the Cowboys at home. 7th ranked defense last season, which actually surprised me. I didn't remember them being quite that good, but Micah Parsons, not much more you can say. Safety Jaron Kearse had a great season as well, with 101 tackles and racked up over 200 points. And obviously, he's Jaron Kearse has just re-signed, as has DeMarcus Lawrence, who I'd potentially be shopping around, see if he's dropped off anyone's radar. I personally wouldn't have sort of dropped him, but with the injury, he only played 7 games last season. So he may, a few people may have sort of stuck him on waivers or sort of put him on the transfer block. It's personally, I think you've got to hang on to someone like DeMarcus Lawrence, despite playing, only just the 7 games. He did still rack up over 14 points per game. Plus, they've let Randy Gregory go to Denver. So, everything points towards someone like, Lawrence sort of featuring once he's back fit, being a key cog in that Dallas defense. Trevon Diggs is a given at sort of DB with 11 picks last season. Elsewhere, Keanu Neal's gone to the Bucks, which might see a bit of an uptick for someone like Leighton Van Der Esch. They brought in Anthony Barr to sort of just reinforce that area from the Vikings. But I think he'll just be there for a bit of extra cover. I'm not sure about, very quickly, their top defensive draft pick was edge Sam Williams. All the reports say he's had some off the field issues. The Cowboys seem to have taken a punt on him anyway. I think I would treat him a bit like I treat the Cowboys sort of generally. They're a very frustrating team on both sides of the ball for various reasons, but you're never quite sure what you're going to get. You'd be looking for sort of fairly safe bets. But on the Bucks side of things, they were 5th ranked D last year. A bit like the Chiefs, kind of business as usual. A couple of players have gone. JPP's gone. And Ndamukong Suh, they've both been released. Akeem Hicks from the Bears, I assume, will plug the rather large hole to some degree left by Suh. They've picked up edge Logan Hill in the 2nd round of the draft. A little bit of a surprise for me. They've traded safety Jordan Whitehead to the Jets, but to be fair, Antoine Winfield racked up 183 points off just 13 games last season. I have found him on a few waivers, usually in the smaller leagues. I think he's definitely one to watch. Another one that seems to get overlooked, and this is a bit strange given his stats, but again, I found him on waivers in a couple of smaller leagues. Linebacker Levante David. 12 games last season, 97 tackles off those 12 games, averaging 40.5 points per game. Definitely one to have a look at if he's available. Like I said, probably not in some of the bigger leagues, but and then you've got the obvious picks, your Devin White, Shaq Barrett's. They'll be long gone. So if you haven't got them on the roster by now, you're not likely to see them until the next off season. I think the Bucks D will be fine this year. They're very stingy against the run. I expect them to be solid. They'll be, round about that sort of top 5 again. I'd be a little more worried about the offense for the Bucks this season. I think the O-line, has Brady become a bit distracted looking towards the end of the season? Probably not, because he is the consummate pro. But in terms of calling this one, I'm going to take a punt on the Cowboys at home. Actually, I'm not entirely sure why. It's not really. It's home field advantage, maybe. I'm not sure whether the Bucks offense will be sort of firing right out the gates or week one. So, but it is week one. It is just a bit of a hunch. It's not really sort of based on anything particular. And then moving on, because I'm having to skip Nate's games. So I'm going to sort of finish up. I know we have skipped a couple of games due to technical issues, but it just seems easier just to gloss over those, and at least when we come back and go over the schedule and do a review of week one next week, then we'll be able to sort of just hark back to them in a bit more detail. So very quickly, we're going to fast forward to Monday Night Football, which seems a bit unfair because we haven't even got Thursday out of the way yet. But Broncos at the Seahawks, another one that seems to have been written by the NFL higher office with the return of Russ Wilson. But Seahawks, decent mid-table performance defensively last season. Jordan Brooks finished as LB3 last season. Bobby Wagner was right behind him. Obviously, Wagner has now, as we touched on, gone to the Rams, which leaves a bit of a hole that I don't think they've plugged. They've picked up. I mean, they've not really sort of strengthened at linebacker in the draft. They opted for Boy Maffei in the second round. He was their first defensive pick, and he's a pass rusher. They've also lost Carlos Dunlap. He's gone to the Chiefs to provide a bit of cover. Okay, he's 33. Corner DJ Reed's gone to the Jets. So they have brought in a 30-year-old Shelby Harris edge from the Broncos as sort of, but that came through as part of the Wilson trade. Finished DL 57 last year, so nothing to get too excited about. They've also brought in Quinton Jefferson from the Raiders, where he finished DL 59. So there are some concerns about the Seahawks defense. The secondary is okay. Obviously, Quandre Diggs had a good season. They'll be, again, Jamal Adams, they'll be hoping and praying he can stay fit for the full sort of 17 games. Broncos, top 3 defense last season. Again, a bit like the Chiefs, a bit like the Bucks, a bit like the Dolphins to some degree. A few tweaks, but nothing radical. The bulk of the fantasy value, yet again this season, from the Broncos will be in the secondary. Justin Simmons, Patrick Surtain, who is just, I don't know, probably nailed on to kick on in his second season at just 22. They've added corner Quan Williams from the Niners, which I think is a decent addition. I would keep an eye out as far as the Broncos go, and talking about the secondary, again, a player that seems to get overlooked, and there possibly are some reasons for that, but keep an eye out for safety Kareem Jackson on the waivers. Okay, he's 34. So he's not a long-term dynasty sort of prospect by any stretch. But he racked up 88 tackles in 15 games last season. And they've just re-signed him to a $2 million 1-year extension. So he obviously fits within their plans. They obviously plan on using him, fairly consistently. So, he's one I've sort of found out there on the waivers, and I think he's good value. Alex Singleton, they brought in to improve the sort of the linebacker situation. It's a bit of a shame Nath's dropped off, because I think this is, I'm as a sort of final precursor to week one, looking at the Broncos linebackers, there is a player who almost certainly has been overlooked in a lot of leagues. Whether he'll come back, I'm not saying for 1 minute that this is it's a little bit out of left field, but Josie Jewell, coming back from a torn pec last year, which restricted him to just 2 games. However, in 2020, he racked up 111 tackles. So he had a real breakout year before that injury early last year sort of knackered it. Also, the Broncos must be reasonably comfortable and confident in his fitness sort of going into this season, because they've agreed a new 2-year contract extension. I think it was just prior to the draft, but and he's someone who will definitely have dropped off a lot of people's radars. I don't think he was someone that we talked about even prior to the injury, to be honest, but I think a lot of people, it might be worth just looking back at some of the numbers he put up in 2020. Is he going to be? I'm not for 1 minute saying Jewell's going to be sort of candidate for comeback player of the season, but it could be an interesting one. Stick him on the bench. In terms of the matchup, I think it's got to be the Broncos. I think the Russ Wilson factor, a bit like Baker going up against the Browns. I think there'll be a bit more mutual respect there from Wilson's perspective. I'd like to think that that's reciprocated by the Seattle crowd, but we'll have to wait and see. I think the Broncos are going to be tough to beat this season. I think the defense is good, and it'll just be a bit more of the same from last season. Seahawks, I think they're pretty much not quite in a rebuild process, but there are some issues there that certainly on the defense that do concern me. With the exception of Jordan Brooks, a bit of depth at linebacker. So we'll go with the Broncos for that one. I am going to have to sign off and find out what's happened to my friend and colleague. So apologies for the technical difficulties. Thank you for bearing with me. We've sort of I've muddled through as many of the games as I could, but as Nath said, we've got lots of things sort of planned for this coming season. The articles from Mike Lewis coming on board. We've already done one pod in the preseason with him. He's a great guy. Really knows his stuff, so I'm really looking forward to having Lewis sort of jump on a few more of them, and just make some final checks with regards to your rosters, and good luck for week 1, and we'll be back next week. Hopefully we'll have learnt whether anything we said made sense this week, but at least we'll have some feedback and some stats and numbers and performances, and a slightly better idea of how some of these schemes are lining up, and it's going to be great to see some of these kids come out of the draft, looking forward to it. So you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy week 1. I'm going to go and make sure Nath's all right. He's not burnt himself on a candle stumbling around in the power cut, and we will catch you guys next week. Take care. Enjoy week 1, and keep rushing, and we'll see you soon. Bye.